Welcome back to the Cannabis podcast. It is my pleasure to have AC Moon Cameron on the show, and she's here to educate everybody and tell you what's going on from a legacy grower veteran perspective. Thanks for joining.
Thanks so much for having me. I hope you guys are all having a great day.
Yeah, I am. I hope you are too.
Heck yeah. We saw the hottest day in all recorded history in Humboldt on Monday, and I was working in a greenhouse amongst thousands of plants in 107-degree heat.
Ooh,
So that was gnarly, and I'm grateful to sit down just with a little home grow in the backyard and a joint and take some weight off the feet. That's for sure.
absolutely. Decompress, hang out, de-stress, do nothing.
Get out of the sun for a second.
Right. And I'm in Austin, so it's about 100 degrees here. So
Yeah.
no shade in sight, and it's really humid. So I'm longing for California and the mountains of northern and even southern California. But yeah, tell everybody about your background and how you're so educated on the plant and why you're passionate about it.
Thanks. Thanks again for having me on. I've been in cannabis for about 25 years now, and definitely makes me a little bit old, but I like to be honest about that. I've been dedicated my whole adult life to it. I was raised as a second generation farmer up in the deep woods off grid in NorCal. So surrounded by the woods, and my daddy came back from the Vietnam War, and I have an older sister that's named Marijuana. Even the Mary Jane theme kind of goes on, and have a
Mm-hmm.
past somewhere in Vietnam, and they came back and tried to normalize it for everybody, and it's been really interesting journey. I think I was raised with my mom with cancer and lupus as well as Graves' disease, and amongst a really, socially acceptable environment where everybody grew cannabis and it was just another plant in the garden. So it's really normal for us, even though a lot of people in the city it wasn't normal. We all just had these tiny little communities where all the pot grower parents pretty much just had pot grower kids. My mom was really against it because the whole boomers thing and the reefer madness thing,
Mm-hmm.
but definitely ran with it at a very young age.
Well, it's amazing that a lot of people in the United States, they don't, since it's so stigmatized, they don't have like mature veterans or adults around to be educating and teaching them how to use or consume, or even just about the plant in general, about the positives and negatives.
Yeah, I've been having an issue of this. I think I wrote an article just recently in Cannabis Now magazine. I write for several different magazines, including Dank magazine out of Canada and Weed World magazine out of London. I've done writing for Grow magazine out of Eugene, Oregon for several years, and a ganja activist out of Trinidad. And so I have really been, focused on trying to just educate, break stigmas, and try to reintroduce this concept of what is prohibition and why is it so different than alcohol prohibition. In a matter of 13 years, alcohol prohibition was dissolved, because there was so much money able to be at the speakeasy, the little elbow rubbing with the right politician and the right bit of whiskey. They got those laws abolished in less than 13 years. And it wasn't just, there was no medical science behind it or nothing that was for the people. It was 3/4 of the United States said we need to stop prohibition of alcohol. And then it was done. For
Would you,
us, we've fought for it for 40 something years to just even be recognized as, an industry and in a commerce that's validated. And we've had to supply all of this medical research and all of these different aspects that really like plagiarize the efficacy of freedom. And like we're now getting rescheduled into the space of medical, when actually that medical rescheduling actually persecutes our people more.
mm-hmm.
um, Without their knowledge, it's actually raised the penalties and the minimum sentencing actions. It's
Mm-hmm.
actually diversified the amount of things that they can penalize us on a federal level for. And in my personal opinion, it over standardizes the future of our industry to the point of where craft and small farmers will not be able to survive, because there will be so much large money lobbying for laws that keep them in power.
Mm-hmm.
And I see things like I just recently moved from Reno, and I've been staying there since I got back from the islands, in the end of this last year. And in Nevada, it is a felony to grow your own cannabis if there is a dispensary within 25 miles. So who do you think created those types of laws to where we didn't, if you're not in driving distance, nah, don't even worry about it. You can grow your own weed. But if we can capitalize off of you, you are forced now to go to our dispensary because we paid for those laws to be in place to force you to come to our dispensary, because it's going to be a felony if you grow your own, if you could drive to our dispensary. And so that's just
Wow.
an example of how these real laws are being created by MSOs, by creating by large industry, and how that affects our individual rights. Like, to even grow one single plant in the background as a felony, the state law making it a felon. Like when they say, oh, cannabis is legal and all these things, no, what it is, it means it's legal for an MSO to sell you weed. It doesn't mean the plant's free yet. If the plant was free, we could deschedule it and trade it over state lines and
Right.
treat it like alcohol, where we can trade our goods. But that's only a
Rescheduling is
piece.
not descheduling.
Descheduling is not rescheduling. Rescheduling literally packages it up. Medical is handed to those that have the most money. And that's what my biggest fear is right now, and where we're going in our community and our commerce. I've watched it for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, big pharma play a huge role in a lot of people's deaths and create the opioid epidemic, while we're persecuted for growing a fucking plant in our backyard. And
Yep.
like
Yep.
seriously, what?
I
And
think like the first
I
people.
think that's where the advocacy comes out of the consultant in me. And I'm no longer a good consultant because I'm sitting there just yelling the advocacy more than I'm able to capitalize on things. You
Right.
know,
Right.
I'm not going to bullshit you. This is just how it is. Kind of a little corrupt, a little fucked up, and you better have some thick skin if you want to play in the game. Like, that's just 100% true.
Yep. And know that you're gonna like it's not gonna be a smooth ride. It's gonna be the toughest probably. Opening a business is tough in general, but opening it in a illicit, illegal, highly regulated, if not, highly watched, observed industry is insane. Especially if it's like you don't have a supply chain and you don't. Because I've seen in LA where they're like, or even just around, they're like, hey, this is where they're going to get the dispensaries. So you have to have this building on this block, and then they just drain
Oh,
people.
the green zone. Yeah,
The
we have
green
green zones
zone.
built everywhere.
And
Yeah,
then they just
I've
move
built
them
green
at the last minute because they know people can't afford them. And so they know only the big people can afford to keep following the
that's
money.
part of the game too. Yep, that's
And
exactly.
it's super, I mean, yeah, like I realized that the first, now cannabis has a lobby group for like a super PAC. They finally have a super PAC. And guess who's on the board of it? Is Monsanto. Um,
I could have told you that one.
People, right. It's not
That's
shocking, but
the
you're like,
sad part. They're working on it, but a lot of people don't understand that Monsanto has had his fingers in cannabis the whole time. Like,
yep,
how many people are supporting companies that support Miracle Grow and Scott's? Like, if you see anything with the label Scott's on it, Scott's is owned by Monsanto. It's the
yep.
same company. If your lawn care, your anything with Miracle Grow, it's all owned by Monsanto.
Mm-hmm.
Like, gas and oil companies in the 1940s didn't know what to do with the excrete of their bullshit from manufacturing fucking big oil. And then they turned it into fertilizer, and they actually sold it back in small increments. That's why you can look on the backside of your shit. And then they created pesticides with the rest of it. And to this day, people are like, oh, what? It has a really cool little label on it. I'm like, you better research that
Super
label.
wild.
Because it's the same company that you fight, you're purchasing. It's it's the
That has
same concept.
admitted they're killing you.
Oh, absolutely killing you. He's had a role the whole time, especially when people are so obsessed with buying every single fucking plastic container in the world just because it looks cool, and having everything look all symmetrical and perfect, and everything like our human design, of the concept of perfection. And he has his hand into every single plastic molded freaking piece that's there. They're owned by the Asian manufacturing companies. companies. It's all one
Yep.
and the same.
Yeah. And now that we know, I mean, hemp plastics can do everything that normal plastics can do, and probably better. And that way, if you do drop anything, it just disintegrates into the ground or fertilizes the ground or
Well, you have to be really, this is a conversation I have a lot as an innovator. I am a patented innovator. I got my first federal patent after I endured federal raids in 2009, where I was raided by the FBI again in 2011 and 2013, and dealt with my partner being indicted for 4 years for 24 plants. And we worked with hundreds and hundreds of plants in 5 different facilities. But I used my funds to become an inventor, and I invented crop tops greenhouses, which is an instant pop-up portable greenhouse that protects plants from storms or is used in breeding practices where there's no cross-pollination, and also protect buds and stuff from storms and chilling hours, things like that. And through that, I have a lot of discussions about innovations. And so I founded Indica Innovations International, where I work worldwide as the consultant and an educator of cannabis and business. And when we speak about hemp plastic, a lot of people have this belief that it's the save all. But we have to remember that hemp plastic is actually more long lasting and durable than the average plastic is. It lasts longer, it's stronger. So it's not like a remedy for the amount of one-time use plastics that are being dumped into landfills that are causing this amount of just huge pollution in the world. Hemp plastic is not a savior of that, because there's no such thing as 100% hemp plastic. What they're using is the same petroleum biopolymers
Mhm.
and minimizing the amount of that by using the hemp fibers as a binder inside the polymer. So that's the actual like grit and matter that's inside of it. So instead of having petroleum on petroleum attached with petroleum molecules, they're having petroleum attached to hemp. And that is hemp plastic is still made with plastic.
Mm.
So there's no like end all solving something with only hemp plastic innovations. They are stronger, they are more durable. But when you think about the concept of stronger and more durable, it doesn't mean it's going to decompose faster. It
Would
means
it be
it's going to be
possible to
stronger
invent
and
that?
durable. It's going to live longer than normal plastic, as a matter of fact. And so we have to think of that in a way of just like biomass, like how much landfill, how much mass of our planet can we actually take up by things that are not being utilized by humans.
Hmm.
We're
Do you
just
think that would be
creating
possible?
waste,
Do you think it'd be
right?
possible to create 100% hemp plastic, like to where, like the dream scenario could exist?
Well, the problem with it, such as Coca-Cola and Pepsi, and I'm not trying to advertise them. That's another oligarchy we won't even get into as advocates and their nanotechnology crap. But they have done a lot of work on minimizing the renewable waste cycle by going into bioplastics. So hemp plastic is where they're using like the roughage, right? The bast and the hurd, which is the ground up matter. And then they stick it into the gooey substance of which is the petroleum byproduct. And then they make bricks or whatever it is that they're
Hmm.
making with hemp plastic. With normal plastic, like I said, it's tiny little beads of solidified plastic that are piled on another and they bond it. So you have a Lego. With bioplastics, it's actually made of tissues of plants. And so it can actually only survive for, under a year, really, like at max under 2 years before it actually just melts away. And the melt away isn't a completely like clear, like all of a sudden the shit disappears. It's the fact that once it erodes, the UV of the world erodes one or two of the coatings on it, then what's left is actually more like a gelatin or pectin,
Mm.
or something that is solidified, and then it can eventually decompose faster. And
Mm.
so we should be looking at more of the textiles from all plants, like even aloe, which has a really, really strong epidermal layer, banana leaf, and all those types of things. They're all true. Hemp is very, very strong. So we can make cars and everything else out of it. But we also have to not stop our conscious innovation at hemp. We have to look at like all the plants.
Hmm.
There's such a spectrum of things that we have to consider, and one of them is the density of bio waste that hemp creates. We
I,
need to break it down a little bit more, in my opinion.
yeah. Yeah. Speaking of other plants, I mean, to your point, they just found CBD in a total another plant in Brazil.
Yeah,
And
and that's happened several times.
yeah, and that's crazy. You're like, okay, that's we don't what else do we not know about plants? A lot.
A lot, a lot. They're sentient in my belief. I have like a
I
strong
agree.
passion in sentient, and I watch them, move. I watch them, reprogram themselves and mutate to the environment and
Hmm.
adapt. And they're definitely sentient to me.
The first time
And
I
I,
ever the first time I ever grew in LA, just me and my roommate, we just had like one plant. And it was in his room, so we forgot to water it and it was kind of like wilting a little bit. And then we fertilized it and everything. And I literally time lapsed it, watched it, the leaves just go back up, and I was like, oh wow, okay. Like
yeah, it's so
I mean,
fun.
if you see it just that in real time, you're like, and then the way it makes you feel, and then you it's totally sentient, in my opinion. I agree.
Well, living on the Virgin Islands the last couple of years and working as an educational business builder for a University of Virgin Islands. So I actually had been surrounded by these special types of plants. I've been working in the Caribbean for about 8 years, down in St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Trinidad and Jamaica and things like that, where I help the Rastafari culture and other people like enter the new medical or recreational platforms that their country has gained. And so there's this one plant that I fell in love with that I actually gained like a relationship with. And I'm writing about it right now for, I think it was Dank Magazine or Weed World, one of the ones that I write for. And it's called a mimosa plant. It's a sensitive plant. And I have a video of it. You can see it on my IG reel at AC Moon. Yeah, just AC Moon at IG. And when you touch it or something brushes by it, it immediately closes and drops to the ground. And when you breathe on it hard, it's so sensitive that it'll close. All the leaves instantaneously close. And so there's these huge groups around my hut and my bungalow where every day I'd go out and smoke a joint, but then I'd start petting the plant and it would close up and hide on the ground. And after I did that for 2.5 months, the plant started recognizing me and no longer recoiled at my touch. It slowly like got to know me. And so I started doing a lot of research on mimosa and how it's done that. And another friend with a dog would show up and they'd go to touch it and it would curl up really fast again. But I would go to touch it just after it came back and it would not react. And it actually got to know me and my touch and my breath and the weed smoke and the things I was introducing to it. And it learned it. And so I became like super fascinated with this fact, this plant that it was so visually sentient. And so if you get a chance, watch that video. I'll send it to you. It's
Yeah,
trippy to watch the plants work because it's a physical movement instantaneously hiding themselves from predators. So it's pretty trippy.
that is wild. Like, I mean, I grew up in the Midwest where it's like poison ivy and like all this kind of stuff where I always was fascinated. I'm like, how if you touch a plant, it like burns your body? Like that's wild to me. And hearing a story like that, that the plant would recoil and then recognize you, that's fascinating. Where
Yeah,
like
it's trippy.
it's alive. Like, and I think we're just plants. I think we're just little plants and plant
Well,
molecules.
if you've ever seen a brain, I unfortunately had an experience where I had a friend of mine commit suicide, and I was cleaning up some brains for the family. And
Sorry.
upon that observation, though, having worked with mushrooms for a long time, I noticed that our brain matter is very mushroom like in texture. And
Hmm.
since we can't really like think about it, one of my crazy thoughts was like, what if our brains are like mushrooms? And what if we're just like super intelligent myco? Like we are like a sentient form of myco
Hmm.
because we're like absorbing and defining enzymes and nutrients and creating all these. We don't really have anything to define ourselves by. It's just
Right.
crazy to
Yeah. And we need
we're
sunlight
all
and we need
doing all
water.
these types of things, but what if an ape ate a big old mushroom and it just mutated their consciousness and caused instantaneous evolution?
Stone
Who
age
knows?
theory.
Aliens came down. We don't fucking know. This could be the crazy. I mean, just let your wine. I smoke entirely too much weed.
No, but that's all stuff that I think about. I think the majority of people that do smoke think about, and the people that don't, they think about it too. But yeah, you sit here and you're like, what if? one of our, ape ancestors was just walking around, picked up a mushroom, was like, boom, and just had this immediate breakthrough to consciousness, and just, oh my God, what is
Spontaneous
this stuff?
evolution is such like an insane chemical reaction. All of a sudden it changes our literal like DNA strands. We
Mm-hmm.
evolve like instantaneously. I don't know. There's so many things that could be possible. I
Mm-hmm.
definitely hope that we can keep on evolving the cannabis industry though, because it's such an important catalyst right now for conscious innovation. And if we're really like thinking about it in that way and not just only focusing on commerce and narcissism and how what we can gain from, you know, extorting this plant
Mm-hmm.
and exploiting a culture. And that goes from using reggae music and Rastafari vibes as a white person's way of getting their views. I mean, these are people that have been bastardized from in public eyes and persecuted since the grassroots of times. Bob Marley was killed as a political ploy.
Mm-hmm.
And when we get to this day, we use reggae music as a flagship for cannabis, yet show no respect. And so I keep trying to remind everybody, the same as the girls, like we're all doing yoga trying to look sexy on IG. And I'm like, dude, these women in India are like being raped and killed and drugged through the streets, like
Mm-hmm.
for showing cleavage or even talking about weed. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, it's a crazy world and we're so separated. And that's why it's so important to bring, I think, worldwide consciousness into that part of innovation so that we can have some more unity in the community.
Right.
Cannabis community can't be all high alone. We got to have someone to pass to. I mean,
Right.
it's not as fun when there's no one to pass to, damn it.
Right. And at least, and then I just got to smoke with the pets and the dogs, and they enjoy it. But, and
Or
that's
like with me, they just become my pets and my dog.
right. We
And
just become, you are your surroundings. So you're just going to turn into a plant. Um, I could guarantee I would put my reputation or whatever on it that if you legalized weed in the world, like throughout the world, there'd be world peace within 12 months.
we're the largest world war that we've ever created because there is an oligarchy at play in every corner of the world. And
Mhm.
so the unfortunate part is the mental illness of narcissism and narcissistic authoritarianism, because the source of all that truly isn't drugs or alcohol, it's mental illness. Like
Yeah, and power is their
people
drug of
obsessed
choice.
with power. And that's the crazy part.
They're just
People
drunk with
continue to
power.
die. I
And
mean, there's a lot of people that, we're dealing with a lot of crime right now because of the failing economy. We have huge distros that are getting pistol whipped for 1,000 pounds, getting robbed, like people on the mountain getting killed because, there is no privacy in the cannabis industry. They want it to be like this open, free information. And then people that have never experienced that lifestyle then are quite interested in taking what others have. And so it becomes like this criminal revenue. It adds to the PTSD.
mhm.
It definitely adds to it. We don't have to just think about politics and the choppers and the raids, but we also have to think about our fellow men and our fellow women and those that look to exploit legacy farmers and those with peaceful spirits that just want to be one with the plant. We got to like protect them from all of that
Mhm.
negative crap that kind of goes on. So.
Yeah. All the noise, all the other noise, and I just wish that, so you were what do you think, what would be your recommendation for anybody entering the cannabis space that genuinely wanted to learn more, or maybe start a brand or work at a dispensary or whatever? Where is there a place to start, or what I mean?
Well, I mean, there's so many levels to that question. So if you want to just learn how to home grow, like follow us on IG, I'll teach you. Uh, if you want to, feel like you're certified and you have a little bit of horticultural knowledge behind you, go to your local college. Get your FAFSA, get a degree in horticulture. If you want to only focus on a cultivation practice that is singular to maybe like indoor growing, outdoor growing, or greenhouse, you can go to places like Oaksterdam University, where I help as an equity mentor. If you
Mm-hmm.
want to learn how to judge cannabis and know what good cannabis is, like fine wine, you're going to look at the Gangier program.
Mm-hmm.
There's many, if you just want to watch a video and get a little bit of insight on how the different aspects of the cannabis industry goes on, you can go to those different ones like Cannabis University or Green Flower or things like that. But I tell everybody quite blatantly, do you want an edibles company? All right. Do you like to cook?
Yeah.
Because you're going to be in the kitchen. You're going to be sitting in front of a hot oven, just like you'd be cooking any damn cookies in the world. There isn't some hype when you're sitting there grinding day in and day out to build a brand, to build a business. If you're not loving cooking with all your freaking heart, don't bother starting an edibles brand unless you are in love with being a boss and a
Mm-hmm.
business manager. And that fits into your performer. You got to have some passion for what you're doing because you got to have a thick skin. And passion is the only thing that's going to make it thick. Is got to have like a drive.
Tell
And if
us.
it's really just about money, they're just going to fly away as soon as it gets hard. And you have to be able to become very fluid, very willing to adapt at all times and take hits, that we call it getting taxed when the cops used to roll on us or we get raided and they'd take our weed, they'd take our money or whatever. We're getting taxed.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still real. Like we're getting taxed on all sides in real taxation, and then from our fellow people,
Mm-hmm.
and then from everybody at large. So, they say if you can't start any sort of business, not clothing business, not a restaurant, unless you can sustain that business for 2 years. You have to have enough
Mm-hmm.
capital to sustain for 2 years. And that's true times 40 in cannabis because you can't just be an average entrepreneur and open a candy shop. You're dealing with an illicit drug
Mm-hmm.
that is now getting rescheduled that you're going to have to do in. And you enter this industry as an entrepreneur, you have to be an exit plan. This is what I've been focusing a lot of my consulting on about right now is when you enter, you have to be prepared to build out that exit strategy so that you can license or sell your concepts, ideas, or platforms or performance to a larger MSO or those that are governing in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a big fish eats little fish concept right now that's going to be so intrinsic as we slowly fail. We have hundreds of farms closed already here in NorCal. Every single place goes from 300 legal farms to like 40. And it's because you can't sustain in this environment. It is all about the ebb and flow of things. And so
Mm-hmm.
I tell people fight for your home grow rights. Fight for your rights to just educate yourself and grow like a tomato plant in your backyard. And you can learn a lot from just the experience of growing. If you want to actually learn horticulture, go to school for horticulture. If you want to learn how to cook, go to school to become a cook. If you want to learn how to infuse things, learn about bioscience and biochemistry, because infusions about how to work with the molecular cannabinoids that are in the oil and in the substrate that you put into the recipe to cook. Cooking and infusion are not the same thing. You can cook anything. The dude that makes that fine olive oil, that's a different profession. So a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people, there's a lot of, distension about what is what. Like you can hype yourself out all day long, but I guarantee you, after 25 years, working in 107 degrees the other day for 2 days straight, there is no glamour in growing thousands and thousands of pounds of weed. It is fucking exhausting. It's agricultural work. And to tell you the truth, most of the other people working in the farms are Hispanic. They're Latino and they have come from South America and they've worked hard to gain their place in the cannabis community because they're from farms that
Mm-hmm.
where they bust their ass in 100 and fucking something degree heat and they're out there still taking care of business. And a lot of people, I won't say white, but it is white, and a lot of other entitled, we don't understand how much work it is. No matter how much automation you have in that system, the more you grow, the more you better know because there's a lot more fail points, risk management that needs to happen, and preparation for your next phase. Otherwise,
Mm-hmm.
one fail and you have lost 10 months worth of work, complete catastrophe. It's so easy to do one day of not watering and you have failed an entire
Mm-hmm.
crop. It's not going to recover like a citrus tree that's growing for 10 years. These are annual plants.
Mm-hmm.
Your one fucked up batch of fertilizer just toasted $300,000 worth of product. And if you're talking about large scale industry, which most of us are, you're actually toasting near on over $1 million of product from
Mm-hmm.
one crop managers fuck us. So you better have a really good management team. You better know what you're doing and have a way to like verify your skills. Due diligence on the people. Don't just be all like, oh, you did a closet grow once. Oh,
Right.
be my master gardener. No, don't do that. Look towards the people that are actually experienced in your climate, in your environment, because growing indoor in the Bay is different than growing outdoor in Michigan. And growing outdoor in the Virgin Islands is different than growing indoor in Sacramento, California. It's all different. It's different elevations, it's different air pressure, it's different UV exposure, different processes, indoor, outdoor, drain to waste, cocoa, peat, regenerative. I mean, there's so many different options and different tabs now. You just got to be able to educate yourself on what you're really looking for and be really clear about your target. Like, what is your mission and why do you truly want to be a part of the cannabis industry? Because once you figure that out, everything else will flow into place. If you want to be an organic, light deprivation, high-end farmer with the gold stamp of regenerative, organic, clean stuff, then that's where I'm going to really highlight you. And I'm really going to make sure that your brand is fighting all those that are trying to, take out the power from those that are consciously growing in the industry for sure.
I'm I'm with you with the home grow, where if you want to just learn something, grow one plant at home. Just start out growing one plant, see how it goes. And real quick you'll go, oh, okay. I got a little bit more of appreciation for the people that grow 15, 20, 30, 40 plants and get them all the way to me with great buds.
Or
Ready
like
to,
here in Humboldt, where we grow thousands upon thousands in one farm. And
that's
so
it's
it's a different world.
supplying majority of the people.
It's a different world for sure. But again, if you don't have just passion for farming in general, and you don't just love, being out there with your hands in the dirt, breaking every nail and just being covered with animal feces as you amend your garden, don't start a farm. Look towards some other aspects.
Mhm.
Just be realistic about what you're doing. It's not just about hype. This isn't gold chain like flopping around. Just this is farming,
Yeah.
and this
Like you
is
don't get your
indoor what we
right.
call clean, still farming,
Yeah.
and like
That's
we're dealing with fish shit.
exactly. Exactly fishing. You catch it, it's right there. There's your product, there's your money. But you when you're growing your product, you don't get that for months. And you're
Right.
always on being at the dispensary, people we'd run out of a certain strain or something. Everyone's like, hey, I need that. Where's that? I'm like, they're growing it. Like you guys smoked
Gotta
it. Like,
wait.
I don't know what you want me to do. Like, it's growing. This
Right.
isn't like,
Went up in flames. Like,
yeah,
yeah,
I'm
that's
like,
definitely
you literally burned it all. And I don't know. This isn't McDonald's.
right. And especially in your area where there's less access, and what you do have access is normally the hemp cannabinoids or,
Hmm.
the ulterior cannabinoids that are
I'm derived.
distilled, and they're products that are made out of the chemical processes of chemicals. So at, at some point, I think about Texas as a demographic and like how much you have to go through to work in that demographic. Is not only like a high carbon footprint for growing outdoors, because you guys are a lot of desert area or high UV exposure area. You need to have a little bit more controlled environment for higher quality cannabis, but you're also subjected to tons of different molds and high humidity exposures. And one of the reasons California has always been the leader is because we are blessed with climate that's naturally controlled to be perfect, like
It's
pretty
perfect.
much 70% of the time. And so when you're in places like Texas where you're not so blessed, I remind people there's different spaces. It's not just about farming big or opening an edibles company or everything else. You can, order CBD legally and and start many different innovations. You can create bath bombs or lotions or tinctures or edibles that are CBD derived or hemp seed derived. I suggest to people, a lot of people right now are on the THCA trip, and they don't really understand that even though it's in the little loophole of what is, hemp and federally legal currently, is because THCA is a precursor.
Hmm.
And so when you apply flame to THCA, it chemically becomes THC delta 9, which is the prohibited, cannabinoid. And so this is our kind of workaround where I love the saying in our culture, where it's like our chemists are smarter than your lawyers, because loophole that goes around. So we have a lot of hemp farmers that are switching to THCA. And again, when you put flame to it, it gets you high, just like traditional high THC
Hmm.
cannabis. And so all these other types of cannabinoids where you're going to see a lot of delta 8, all right, that's extruded and separated and isolated from distillate. Distillate is made with BHO, which is butane. And so these are things that are very hard to beep out of the molecules of cannabis. So in essentiality, they're going to allow that because the medical rescheduling will allow that type of product to proliferate without much judgment on knowing how it's going to work with our internal particles, these types
Yeah.
of things. But again, you can create, beverage companies. And I have a friend of mine that did an aerosol mister similar to an
Oh yeah.
inhaler. There's a lot of space for innovation in the environment such as Texas, where you still have high THC prohibition going on. It just, you have to be just a little bit more creative, I think.
Hmm.
But from CBD fruit rolls and edible underwear to anything else, there is still the same amount of plant innovation space as we have in the high THC world in cannabis here.
Hmm.
And you have the advantageousness of being able to order it online. You can get a
Which is
leader,
wild.
even from me, off of LinkedIn. You can order CBD and create product innovations of all forms and be actually able to operate in the hemp system. So that is something that I totally like to remind people about. And
We're
growing hemp is awesome too. You can get HCA seeds that, again, when you put flame to it, will get you high. And when it's growing in your yard in Texas, it is legal because this plant doesn't have any THC in it until it goes into bud.
exactly.
So we can work with seeds legally, interstate, and all sorts of different things. You just have to educate yourself on how to work with all the little loopholes. There's
That's
little loopholes.
the
We gotta get them all in there.
that
Let's
little
go.
loophole, that little
Yeah,
seed that grows through the concrete. Um,
absolutely.
but you were saying the king of Thailand is
He lives in Germany. And so we have to remember that Bayer Pharmaceuticals and all the largest pharmaceutical and oil companies in the world are based out of Germany.
mm,
So when they first were like, here, you see all the rush of all this legalization, and they just allowed homegrown Germany, is to allow everybody to pacify them into believing that they're free. But in all reality, Big Pharma is going to slide up on the back end and take control. In my opinion, I have no proof yet, but I've been watching the world as it goes on. And I used to live in Thailand and still work a lot in the Thai area. And when they saw the onslaught of what just complete freeing what they thought was recreational was an accident, they did not write the legislation in a way that had the proper wording that
mm,
described the separation of hemp opposed to high THC cannabis. They did not know the actual words and product were that different.
mm,
All they saw was the echo of hemp legalization going on in the UK, Germany, Europe, and other places, including New Zealand, Australia. So they jumped on this board. So then dudes immediately came right afterwards, saw this $1 trillion industry opening up from Bangkok all the way to the South Andaman Sea, and were like, you need to put a rein on this. This is actually, big pharma territory, I believe. So now I think it'll take a lot longer because there's a lot of corruption in Thailand, and a
mm.
lot of it is ran by mobs and mafias and things like that. You can buy a cop off for about 200,000 baht. Those type of practices are pretty common throughout Asia. So I think it'll take a while for it to re-implement. But when I lived there, it was by penalty of death that we weren't allowed to use or work with cannabis. And when I visited farms there in Thailand, it was very fearful. They would harvest and just throw it into pits of banana leaves and cover it with banana leaves and let it ferment and mold the outer layers, and just to get those pounds of the core of it being, dried. But they couldn't dry it above ground at the time. So it's a lot of change has gone on,
That's so
but I
wild.
I see a lot of fear now with the people that have advocated for medical, because they don't know where it's going. They don't know how the oligarchy is going to overthrow it. One of the things that, not to continue forward, but one of the things that I advocate for in the way of knowledge is understanding and looking into, why did the whole world shut down like hemp and cannabis? Like, why did it become illegalized? Like, you can go and I was in Japan, and like people don't even know what a cannabis leaf looks like. They don't know the shape. It's been taken out of their society a long time ago, and they were persecuted so much for anything to do with it that they silenced it and made it taboo to even speak of. Like, how did this international space become like this? They all look towards America. And so I started studying it. And originally, cannabis was patented as a commodity of war because it was able to make the canvases, the fuels, the medicinals, the oils, the everything that it could be made. It was patented to be able to do that. And so they wanted to, hemp for victory and all those things we spoke of before. These
Mm-hmm.
were campaigns to overthrow all the other countries because we were such a small fraction of the supplier of the world chain of having the supply, that we did hemp for victory campaigns where you could pay your taxes, in hemp and all these types of things. And when World War II, Korean War came on, where my family is military for both of those encounters, as well as the Afghani Desert Storm, you can see that the soldiers were actually in Desert Storm protecting opium crops. And in those same sentences, we can see that, our government has bought out in many different corrupt ways. And I
Afghanistan
really,
too.
yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you have to really look at it, because they basically wrote in the World Treaty that if you, by penalty of war, if you break any of these rules,
Mm-hmm.
we are, you are breaking the World War Treaty. And when America is the powerhouse of all of these wars throughout time, the whole rest of the world shut it down because they're not going to allow their people to go to war because you're growing weed. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you're not having anything to do with it. And so they said, this is taboo. You're not allowed to do it, or we're going to kill you. And that's only because America said, this is what you have to do. So now we've legalized it and been all like, oh, 2008 hemp bill. Now everybody else is doing the same, because they're like, look, now we're going to open up trade again, and we no longer have the power. On top of the fact that we started trading oil and yen,
Mm-hmm.
and the dollar has no value anymore because of it. And so it's becoming a level playing field, I think. And, cannabis is going to be a catalyst for re-entering, this next generation in a worldwide fashion, not just in America.
Yeah.
It's going to be a real integration, I think, of resources and
I
our ability to.
I agree with you. A lot of people look at me sideways when I tell them, "Hey, everything happening around the world right now all has to do with cannabis and hemp," and they're like, "I don't know about that." I'm like, "Okay, but." And then when you're getting like crypto bills mixed with the farm bill, you're like, okay, now they're, and then Brazil and South Africa legalize or decriminalize stuff, and they're members of the BRICS nations. And it's, if you can start seeing all these movements, you're like, okay, I don't know what's happening, but something's happening.
It's integration. It's integration of an entire commons.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that, we could have never fathomed when people were yelling like, let's legalize it. I was like, no, don't legalize it. Please stop saying that, because I knew what that really meant. Is it meant tax and govern, because that's all that really means.
Yep.
Legalities are just a method of man to control. And so,
Industrialization.
yeah, it's the industrialization. I mean, how many plants? Our whole world is built on plants. Our house is made of plants. Everything around us is made of plants. If it's not made of plants, it's made of old dead plants and dinosaurs called petroleum. So
Right.
it's like our entire society is literally built with plants. So at one point, I asked people, we're going to go through this chain of exploitation of every plant. You better be conscious about how you're interacting, your entrepreneurial movements in it, because that dictates the future of what is, right?
Mm-hmm.
The future is history. What we're doing right now is the future's history. And
Yeah.
I want it to be a good one. And cannabis can be a catalyst of real positive change if we, focus on regenerative farming, when those that have large agriculture, even in the hemp industry, is the most important. It's such an important catalyst to save the environment and remediate soil damage and everything else,
Absorb
conserving the
CO2.
water. Absolutely. And so just thinking about practices and always having regenerative farming and giving back to the earth with cannabis instead of just exploiting it,
Mm-hmm.
because it's just going to be another plant when they're done with this,
Mm-hmm.
or another type of fungi or whatever else that they can exploit.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, they just figured out that the pitcher plant is one of the strongest opiates on the planet. So big pharma now is about to own pitcher plants.
Sounds like they, right. It's always like when another country finds like a bunch of resources, they're like, sounds like that country needs some freedom. Well, they have freedom. That's so depressingly accurate though. I don't even know how that stops, like I wish I had answers like that, but I don't. It's above my pay grade, so to speak.
I
Um,
think back to the land and having less reliance on society is my answer. I was raised with my mom, like I said, with cancer, way off grid, and my mom was a doomsday prepper. And
mm,
so I was raised with, we butchered our own animals, we went hunting, we gardened from the gates up, and having that symbiosis. I never saw television until I was 10 years old. I wasn't indoctrinated by school systems. All those things gave me the ability to have like a deeper consciousness of what free will really means,
well, that
and the
doesn't
ability
exist
to really
anymore.
like implement what society sees as rebellion. I see as my freedom and my right to be free. And so I think that's what a lot of these cannabis industry, or cannabis culture rather, not industry, the culture here in Humboldt, that we've grassrooted it for since the original legalization act, was because we all have that same echo. You may see us as rebels, but we're just, you know, we just want to go back to the earth. You know, we want to go farm and homestead and grow our own food and take care of ourselves and stop relying on McDonald's and electronic and one-time plastic unrenewable bullshit that you throw
Hmm.
away 2 seconds after you open it. Like, everybody's part of a toxic cycle, and we really want to find a way to get away from that,
Hmm.
and still be happy and have a fucking hell of a time doing it. Just enjoy every bit of life. But just do so in a conscious manner. It doesn't have to be the detriment of our future.
Well said. It is a constant conscious effort though, and that's why people don't do it. And, it's easier just to say, I'm going to go do this or, whatever. But even me, like, I'm like, man, I need more hemp clothing. I want more hemp stuff and hemp shoes and hemp backpacks. Cause I know I've seen some really cool stuff. The problem is just like right now, almost a lot of the stuff is really expensive because of the supply chain and the economy and like kind of all that stuff. Um, but to me,
And
cannabis,
the issue with fast fashion is huge.
the what?
The issue with fast fashion is super huge. The
Right.
destruction from the creation of clothing in general in other countries is phenomenal environmental. You know, tell
Hmm.
people, just go to thrift stores. Stop thinking that your white shirt is worth
Right.
your Armani $50. Like, you're crazy right now.
Right. I'm as simple as it gets, right? Like I don't, and I see people like I'm a minimalist in the sense of the word like that, where like just give me my plants, and it's even we are plants because we even refertilize the soil when we die, and we all die. So I, uh,
Yeah,
it's
it's
just
amazing how the cycle works, doesn't
right.
it?
Isn't that interesting? And even that's why cannabis to me is so drawing, I guess, so appealing to keep investigating because not only can it be the capitalist, but it's got history to it, it's the culture to it, and you have to really care about it in order to keep going. So that's why I really respect you and a lot of people that have been doing it for a very long time because especially, the threat of death, it's like 99% of people are like, okay, I'll just grow corn or something, and it's fascinating. I haven't been up to Mendocino. Or excuse me, I haven't been up to Humboldt. I've been up to Mendocino. and I'd love to get up to Humboldt, but even just going one time up to Mendo, I was like, okay, I don't even have a clue about the way this works and the supply chain and how things get from seed to soil or seed to sale, so to speak. True
It's a
farm to
network.
table.
Yeah, it's a whole network. That's definitely why we used to be called organized crime, but
Mm,
now we're just organized commerce because they can tax us now. We're not crime anymore because they can profit off us.
right.
But soon enough, it will be corrupted, and no longer will we be able to keep the feet on the ground as much. It's the unfortunate part. So we're just fighting to stay aware, like bring brands and small farmers back to the forefront, and really, like we were speaking about before, fighting that PTSD where all of us want to hide in the woods away from being robbed and Googled and having helicopters drop on us, where I've been through raids where it's like my family was held on the ground with AR-15s, like we're pulled out, like I'm running as far and as fast as I can from full-on dog packs and 14, 15 SWAT guys, and they annihilate and drop everything, and then they indict you federally. And so, I mean, it's not a game for the faint of heart up until this point. Right now, if you want to believe that there is, a part of you that really wants to be in the culture and in the society, then embrace cannabis as an advocate and just help us to destigmatize it, lower the inhibitions of people to try it. And in echoes of what you said, how different it is. Oftentimes, I don't know if it's us or it's the plant. Like, these plants are so sentient. There's actually a chemical inside of these that is it's not abscilic acid, it's not auxin either. I'll remember it. It's attached to the beta-caryophyllene substance. But the plant is so intelligent that it creates like enzymes that causes addiction, and then it makes it so that you can come and you eat it, and then it's seeded, and then I take it away and then I poop it out and I'm carrying its seed. And the plant is so intelligent that it's raising its cannabinoid level to make us want to proliferate it in society. Like, it's that smart of a plant.
Mm,
It got us all to grow it, and now we're all obsessed with it. Like, this plant is pretty freaking smart. Like, poison oak was
wow.
smart enough to give us a rash so that we'd avoid it. But if you have a plant that causes addiction, it's so smart that I will die at its feet because I love it that much. So we have to really decide on if it's us or is it the plant.
Right.
because
Is it us or is it me or you? Is it us or them?
because of the feeling that it gives to us and can give to us, not just from ingesting it or smoking it, but actually just being around it. I can't be away from farms for very long, even though I work amongst thousands of plants. I still have to come home to my legal amount in it.
Hmm.
Even hemp plants, same feeling. You have like an attachment to it. And I'm like, how are you so smart? How'd you get me to want to just grow the shit out of you,
Right. Right.
And to have choppers bust in on us. And I mean, in the raids that I came into my Trinity property in 2013, they para jumped onto me and the trimmers on ropes out of choppers. Like, it straight up was like war zone. They're blowing all of our plants over by hovering this freaking chopper down, and then they just throw out ropes, and all these SWAT dudes come para jumping into the fields, and me and all
Wow.
the trimmers, we're belly military crawling out of the underbrush up through freaking Hayford, just trying to find escape, and then they block in all of our roads so that there is no way out. And then eventually fires start, and then the fires start pushing everybody. It's just the same as any sort of war zone as
Hmm.
evacuation. They've used those practices, and like I started, and sorry for going in a full circle, but we definitely have a lot of PTSD in this industry, and they say smoking it alleviates PTSD. Well, when you grow it, you can't get rid of the PTSD
It's not,
that it
it's,
took to grow it.
it keeps going and you're getting PTSD because you grow and then you keep growing, then you keep getting PTSD. So
Yeah,
it's,
and there's nothing that gets rid of it.
right. Descheduling would get rid of it.
Yeah,
That would
let's
be
vote for
the
that one.
right. Hey, we just solved it. Isn't that fascinating how
Free the
simple, right.
planet.
It's that is a great kind of way to kind of wrap it up. Is it's a plant. Like it's a plant. And I've never understood, even when I was like, I don't like conscious, just learning about things like, wait, so this is a plant that makes me feel great and it's illegal? Oh, they don't want me to feel great.
Right.
So,
But you have to remember it's about the commerce cycle. So as we leave, just remember to study the plants around you. Look in your front yard, look at the trees. The
mhm,
white fir has CBD in it. Other plants in Southern America and all over the world, they have CBD in it. Like plants are magic. They're put here as a symbiosis energy for us to utilize and embrace and be part of our life cycle. Like they are part of us. Like they're in our stomachs, they're in our
right.
genes, they're in our cells, and we are
Like,
in theirs. So
like all those vitamins we buy are plants. Like,
it's all plants. Like ibuprofen is synthesized from meadowsweet, which is literally willow and birch, and then synthesized from meadowsweet plants. So the actual like the remedy to your ailment is
mhm,
probably in your garden, but they don't want you to know that. So they're not going to make a commercial that says, "Hey, did you grow your
right,
ibuprofen today?" They're
right.
going to say, "Did you buy the ibuprofen that I made today?" Because they just took away your information, and that's how they truly dominate you, is by taking that information away from you. So don't be afraid to educate yourself and reinvent yourself,
Yep.
because that's really what it's all about. Just
Studying
keep innovating, smoke ganja, and innovate.
smoke weed every day. No, so the
Yeah,
that
yeah, I love it.
the history of cannabis, like I would go back and I'm like, I realized I was like, oh my God, ibuprofen was the beginning of the opioid crisis, really, because it's
Well, it's kind of was. You got to go back a little bit further. It was actually morphine, so it's still based off of poppies.
right, the mainstream of the industrialization of, but yeah, morphine, World War I, World War II, and then you get Bayer, ibuprofen and stuff. That's and then now we're taking things that are hydrocodone, oxycontin, and fentanyl and all that stuff, and it's just like, oh my gosh,
Mhm.
it's going to come back to the
And
plant.
right now, like I said, they're exploiting the pitcher plant, which you can
Mhm.
buy at your local pharmacy anywhere. They don't know that it's supposed to be behind the counter because big pharma's behind the counter. They'll just put it in the nursery section and rely on you not knowing what its value is.
Hidden in
So
plain
you'll
sight,
grow it the whole time and buy the pills from them, even though it's made out of the same thing.
just hiding right there in plain sight, right in front of you.
They're relying on people not educating themselves. They're relying on the laziness of humans. So go back to the earth and go back to the books too, because Google's corrupt. All of it's corrupted. It's a pay to play world. So just
Hmm.
inform yourself
Wikipedia,
anything
all that
you
stuff.
can.
Yeah,
Speak to the elders. They know best, right?
speak to the elders. There's a reason why that tradition always continues, and
Yeah.
that's the best way to put it is keep studying. Um, don't like even a video or a conversation I had with somebody 6 months later, I'm like, I need to do that again because there's way more things that are happening, new news, new discoveries. I can't keep up.
Constant evolution. And that is the blessing that we have the opportunity. There's so many people, and we have to like bow our heads for a moment for all the wars and all the poor people in Gaza and the children that are being killed. And over, 200 children were bombed and killed yesterday. And even though we want to have like an obsession with just this one commerce, there's a reason these wars are going on all over the world. And cannabis definitely has a cause and effect in that big oligarchy of what is to be. They're trying to legalize cannabis now in Russia at this while they simultaneously are creating genocide. And so I
Mm,
I really want people to just shut off the IG reels where everybody's dancing like monkeys for just 1 second and educate yourself. IG is
mhm,
not the news, and the news isn't even the news. Find the local people that really will tell you the truth.
mhm. I,
Not bought and paid for media. That's all
mhm.
bullshit.
I, that's, yeah, it's all a game, all in that area. I posted something the other day. I said, if you know the name of the Hocktua girl and you don't know the name of your Secretary of State, you're the problem. Like, because people can, oh, I know her name. And I'm like, do you know who the Secretary of State is? And they're like, what? I'm like, okay.
What's the
So
Secretary of State? It reminds me constantly of that movie Idiocracy. Like literally, that was the roadmap of the world. If you have never seen the movie Idiocracy, please watch it. It is literally what I fear as everything.
we, it's like someone watched it and was like, do that. let's do that.
exactly like verbatim do that. They're like, "Hey, dude, how'd you get to be the secretary of the state? Oh, I think you won a contest on the radio." Like
Mm-hmm.
that's
Mm-hmm.
that's literally their lines. What the fuck?
And there's
Not sure.
I,
Not sure.
I rewatched it again like maybe a month or two ago, and I was like, it's almost depressing to watch again because you watch and you're like, this is so accurate. This is really bad.
It's so
I mean,
accurate. It's sad.
hats off to Mike Judge being a genius and foreshadowing it, but like it really is depressingly accurate. And you're like, oh my God, we're there. We're past there. You know, the sequel would be a parody of real life.
No, I mean literally even down to people going into the movie theaters and they're not even questioning why they're watching people fart for an hour or who even is farting or why they're farting. Like people's like version of entertainment now is so low level for the most part. I really,
Mhm.
big ups to anybody that took the time to watch this long of a podcast and just be intrigued with human conversation again.
Right.
Because there's a lot of humans that have dumbed down so much. All they want to do is watch booty shaking and have no idea what's going on in the world, let alone what is the future of cannabis, the commerce, or all the things that we've discussed. So
Mhm.
big up to you. Thanks for
We're
tuning in.
plant shaking over here. That's what we're doing. We're plant shaking. We'll tell everybody
Make a shake, 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 shake.
shake. Well, thanks for joining me on a great discussion. Hopefully, we can talk again. Tell everybody where they can find you on all the socials and also some of your writings and your journalism.
Thanks. I write for Dank magazine out of Canada, out of Weed World magazine out of the UK, Ganja Activist out of the Trinidad, and we cover most of the Caribbean, as well as Grow magazine in Eugene, Oregon. So if any of those different sectors, there's different co-policies also for Cannabis Now. You can find me at AC Moon on IG, at AC Moon Cameron on LinkedIn, as well as Facebook. And my company currently is Indica Innovations International at indicainnovations.com. And you can always contact me and I'll do my best to help you in any of your entrepreneurial advocacy or educational needs. Absolutely. And definitely hit up Oaksterdam. And we're about ready for Reggae on the River here in Humboldt. So come out and check us out and dance your ass off and enjoy a good weekend out in the Emerald Triangle.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. Well, thanks again. I appreciate it. I'll pin all the links in the description for everybody to check out and check out the beautiful plants and some of the good journalism and some of the good advocacy. I really appreciate you joining. It has been my pleasure.
It's my pleasure too. I hope you have a great day.
I
Keep
will.
smiling.
I'm gonna go medicate myself. So
Heck yeah. Do that. Do
I will.
that. And I'll have to like hook you up with some good hemp seeds. So all you people in Texas can get a little taste of gardening in there.
There
It
we
is
go.
the best gateway drug is gardening.
Well, Cali to Texas, it'll just follow me. It'll be like my scent.
Yeah, let's do that, man. I hope you have a great day and thanks for having me on.
Thanks. You too. We'll talk soon.
Absolutely. Big ups.
Bye.